Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vicini. We're presented by CLNS Media. Today on the show, replete with a brand new microphone. He sounds like he actually sounds in real life instead of a robot who only gets half of his words through. It's Tony Jones from over at The Athletic. How's it going, Tony?
What's up, Sam? How are you, man?
It's great to actually hear your real voice, because the last time that we did this, oh boy, were people very angry about the audio quality. So we went ahead, we got you a microphone. You now sound like you sound like a normal person, and that's the most important part here.
Yeah, it was. Shout out to all the people who were like, yeah, we love you guys, but
but this is trash.
This is really bad. Can you do something about this audio?
Oh my God. Yeah, that was bad. That was, I like, the funny thing is, like, as we were recording, and we can like go behind the veil real quick, but like when we were recording, I told Tony this, like, I was like, this is pretty bad. I don't know if this is going to work. And then I went back and listened to it, and I actually thought it might be okay. And then within like 10 minutes of posting it, it was like, this is trash. What are you doing? Why are you posting this?
Yeah, it was, like our Twitter mentions, I mean, because they were tagging both of us. So, our Twitter mentions were, they were very clear in how they felt about the audio.
Yeah.
Let's just put it that way.
We needed to make a change. Today on the episode, we're going to talk about Jimmy Butler coming to practice. I still haven't talked about this somehow. We're going to talk about Joakim Noah getting stretched and cut and why I think it was terrible. We're going to talk about Mike Muscala's dad just being the dumbest person maybe in America. Then we're going to do NBA predictions. We're going to talk about, I already told you guys who my MVP pick is, but we're going to run through that. Defensive Player of the Year, Rookie of the Year, Sixth Man, all that jazz. And then we're going to give like Eastern Conference finalists, who wins the most games in the regular season. And we're eventually going to get to the point where we name our entirely obvious NBA champion for the year in the preseason. So let's jump in. Let's talk about Jimmy Butler coming to practice. Jimmy, oh boy. Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler decided to show up to practice on, I guess it was Tuesday. Or no, it was Wednesday.
It was Wednesday.
Proceeds to show up late to practice. Just like kind of rolls in, starts playing like their scrimmages and pickup, and takes the third stringers and kicks the shit out of the first team, and then beats the backups too, and then just walks out. Apparently he was there for like under an hour. And real quick shout out to MGRADS on Twitter for giving everyone the full scoop. Woj got like the, initial thing happening at first, and John Krasinski put in some color and Shams put in some color, but MGRADS gave all of the details and the nitty gritty on this. So shout out to him for giving us all the detail that we needed. And now, oh boy, the details. They are just beautiful.
Now, I can tell you, MGRADS once went at me on Twitter, so I'm not sure he likes me. But definitely a shout out to him, because it was like, he went at me on Twitter over Zion Williamson once.
What you got to understand about MGRADS, because like I've met him before. Like I talked to him, not like all the time, like maybe once or twice a month. But he genuinely just kind of likes to fuck with people. It took me a while to understand that, and I was like, is this dude coming at me? Is he serious right now? And he has a very unique Twitter persona, and you got to understand that a lot of it just comes from the jokes. And like, he's not coming at people seriously most of the time.
Yeah, well, I don't know. We haven't talked since, the funny thing is we haven't talked since that Zion Williamson thing, and I was still on Trip Jazz. So I'm no longer on Trip Jazz, so I don't know if he knows that I exist anymore. But but for real, I read his entire timeline through that Jimmy Butler thing, and for real, he definite shout outs to him, because there was definitely more detail than what Woj had. Like, I knew it was going down when he was like, holy shit, I got the entire Jimmy Butler practice story right now.
Oh my God.
I was just like, okay, here we go. So no, definite shout out to him, and shout out to him for predicting that Jimmy Butler was going to go on ESPN and kind of try to walk a little bit of this back, and kind of preemptively saying it doesn't matter what Jimmy says on there. This is what happened.
Yeah, the funniest thing about all of this was that it was like pre-orchestrated by Jimmy Butler and his camp to then do an ESPN interview with Rachel Nichols, who was just magically in Minnesota because of course she was. That's definitely
what a coincidence.
That's definitely where the set of the jump is. So this was all set up by Jimmy, and then you listen to him interview, and he just like, I don't want to say he like totally threw his teammates under the bus. He threw them under the bus a little bit though. Just a little bit. Like, little stuff like who's the best player on our team, or who's the most talented player on our team? It's Cat. Who has the most God-given ability on our team? It's Wiggs. And then who plays the hardest? Who wants to win the most? I do. And it's just like, Jimmy, you can't be doing that, man. Unless you really just want to go. And it's very clear that this is all a setup for him to go. He then went on Thursday to have a players-only meeting. That
Jeff Teague said it was no players-only meeting.
Yes.
And then he confirmed it.
And then Jimmy Butler, just like 5 minutes later, is like, yeah, we had a players-only meeting today. It seems like to me what happened there was Jimmy wanted it out there that there was a players-only meeting. Whether or not like it was every player was invited, or if it was just like, okay, yeah, I'm going to have a couple players here, and then I'm going to say that we had a players-only meeting and leak it. I don't know. I think that's possible, but it was clear that he wanted it out there, that he tried to clear the air a little bit. And even like the clearing of the air idea here was totally ridiculous, because he just like, you can't clear the air and say, yeah, I'll play with you guys after you go on TV and be like, I just want it more than these guys do. And that's Jimmy Butler's stick. Like, he is someone who plays up how hard he works constantly. He's that guy in the office who makes sure that everyone knows exactly what he's doing at all times, so that everyone knows that he is valuable to the company. What Jimmy needs to realize is it's incredibly obvious that he is valuable to the Minnesota Timberwolves. It's incredibly obvious that he is a top 15 player in the NBA. He doesn't need to let us know all the time that he's working his ass off.
Well, the problem is, the thing about it is, I mean, no matter what you do, basketball is a team sport. Nobody's won it by himself, ever. So, yeah. I mean, you could work hard and this and that, but a lot of that stuff is counterintuitive if you turn your teammates off to what you're trying to do in the process. So, I mean, I try to understand both sides, and I understand a little bit where Jimmy Butler's coming from. I mean, he's right. Andrew Wiggins hasn't gotten an inch better in 5 years. And truth be told, I mean, Karl-Anthony Towns, as talented as he is, he's got to get better at a lot of stuff as well. So, I mean, I can understand where Jimmy's coming from, but the way that it's playing out, you just can't have it play out that way. And, you're kind of screwing yourself as to what you want, which is you want to trade, and you want teams to want you, and you want teams to fawn over you and to hold a bidding war over you. But right now, I mean, the thought process around the NBA is like, wow, if you trade Jimmy Butler, you got to trade him to a real specialized type of team. Like, there's got to be a veteran presence in that locker room. Like, yeah, Pat Riley better be at the top of that front office, because he can't go in there and try to run over the locker room in the front office, and you don't want that reputation about yourself. And right now, you have that reputation. So, I mean, I think you're kind of biting off your nose to spite your face a little bit.
Yeah, and like the other thing is too here, when you're talking about a situation where a guy is clearly trying to get traded, it never should have gotten to this point. Like, it never should have been to a stage where you have Jimmy Butler show up for practice. And we're going to kind of talk about, not a similar situation, because Jimmy's actually good and Joakim Noah is not good. But like, we're going to talk about a situation where the Knicks had to send a guy home last year. If you're Minnesota, there's no benefit to playing Jimmy Butler right now. Like, what is your upside versus what is your downside? Your upside is, okay, we keep Jimmy Butler all year. We let him play. We win 50 games. and lose in the second round of the playoffs at best, and we end up losing him for nothing in the offseason. That's not a good outcome if you're Minnesota. Tom Thibodeau seems to think like that is a good outcome. That is an incredibly short-sighted, terrible outcome for Minnesota, because in reality, you need to be building for the long term, for the post-Warriors era. And by just keeping Jimmy and letting him go at the end of the year for nothing, you're not doing that. You're actually hindering that idea going forward. So if that's your best case scenario here, why aren't you considering moving him to everyone and building up a bidding war? Their leverage here is not keeping him for a while and seeing what happens. Their only source of leverage here is creating a bidding war among multiple teams and then playing those offers off of each other. They have no contract leverage here. They have no ability to get him in and make it so that this all kind of works out. The downside to playing him, though, is so much greater than what the upside is. The downside is that he gets hurt. A guy that missed 30 games last season and has a ton of miles, a ton of high intensity miles from playing so many 40-minute games under Tom Thibodeau in Chicago and playing 40-minute games last year. If he gets hurt, you lose him for nothing in the offseason anyway, and he's going to get maxed somewhere. And you lose him for this season when you're trying to win 50 games for your terrible short-sighted idea. So the downside here is so much greater than the upside. They should be using their leverage of, pushing contract or trade offers against each other and making it so that that's how they go about their business now. Not and getting rid of him and getting him out of this terrible situation that has been cultivated. And it is a terrible situation, because if you saw Minnesota against Milwaukee on Friday night, that team is fucked right now. There is no way around it. That team is fucked. They were down. They gave up 84 points in the first half.
Well, the thing about it is, and that's the big point right now. The big point right now is that the team is demoralized from the inside out. They're not playing hard.
I prefer the scientific term fucked, but demoralized works.
There's no life right now. And that's the big thing. And, a Tom Thibodeau team should never, ever, well, let me amend this. No NBA team should ever give up 84 points and a half, whether it's preseason or no. And just the fact that, the Timberwolves haven't played well in this preseason, and that is such a distraction, and that has been such a clown show. At this point, it doesn't matter whether Jimmy comes back or not. You got to get, if you're Tom Thibodeau, you got to get your guys ready, and you have to get and you have to get your guys on the same page, and they're not on the same page. And for what happened on Wednesday in practice and what happened on Thursday, I put that on Tom Thibodeau. I put that on Scott Layden. I put that on the Timberwolves front office. They should have never let him in the building. They knew he was going to act a fool. Everybody knew he was going to act a fool. Jimmy knew he was going to act a fool. You know why? Because he told the Timberwolves, if you make me come back, I'm going to act a fool. So, he acted a fool.
It makes no sense to me to have him in the building.
I thought it was just, I'm like, wait a minute, why is he even in the building? And then, of course, finally, what I think happened, Glenn Taylor steps in and is like, okay, we're going to cancel practice tomorrow because this is an untenable situation and we got to do something about this. And so
they canceled practice so that the same situation wouldn't happen on Thursday as what would happen on Wednesday. And then the same shit came about because Jimmy is going to handle his business publicly right now because he wants to go. He knows that is his leverage. His leverage in getting a trade done is making everything public and making it a mess.
What would be a good outcome for the Minnesota Timberwolves right now? Going ahead and accepting a trade that brings Josh Richardson and a first-round pick and maybe Kelly Olynyk.
Yeah, was...
Just take that trade. Take the deal.
And, it was reported over the weekend, last weekend, I'm sorry now, that was on the table. Josh Richardson, a first-round pick, and it was probably going to be Dion Waiters. To me, I would prefer Kelly Olynyk in a deal. They need to find a way to make the contracts work. There are really only three ways that a Richardson first-round pick for Jimmy Butler deal works. It has to be one of Dion Waiters, Kelly Olynyk, or I believe it's James Johnson. You could also make Tyler Johnson work, if I remember correctly, but you'd have to add something else if you're Minnesota in there, and it gets a little bit more complicated. But those are the three guys where the deal works. You can just do a 3-for-1 swap. You could also try and get another team involved and, have them take another contract. It seems unclear at this stage if Tom Thibodeau is trying to get rid of Gorgie Jang, if he's trying to attach him to Jimmy Butler, or if he's not. I don't really know what's going on there, but I'm very confused as to why the negotiation here isn't just, hey, we'll do this deal with Jimmy. We'll give you Josh Richardson. We'll give you this contract match of Dion Waiters, and we'll give you a first-round pick. It'll be a first-round pick that's way down the road because Miami can't deal first-round picks for a while, but we'll give you one. Why isn't the just move from Minnesota to be, okay, but it needs to be Kelly Olynyk as the salary match? Because if you're Miami, you have Bam Adebayo, you have Hassan Whiteside. I don't see Kelly Olynyk as being like the breakdown point for a Jimmy Butler deal, but if you're Minnesota, you're also getting a guy in Kelly Olynyk on a totally reasonable contract that I think you could pretty easily move to a third destination. So
you could move him to a third destination, but I think the larger point with Kelly Olynyk is you have lineup flexibility with him. You can play him at the 4, you can play him at the 5.
Sure.
He can shoot the basketball. He can go a little bit off the dribble. I mean, he can do multiple things that can help Karl-Anthony Towns and Andrew Wiggins, and Josh Richardson is a stud. No, he's not Jimmy Butler. No, he's not going to be Jimmy Butler. He's never going to be Jimmy Butler, but he's a really good 3-and-D guy, and he's a guy that can handle pick and roll. He's a guy that can defend. He's 24, 25 years old. He's just coming into his own. I mean, he's a legitimate starter in this league, and he'll help Andrew Wiggins. He'll help Karl-Anthony Towns. He'll help Tibbs. I don't understand why they just don't take that trade. Jimmy's toxic right now. Get the toxic feelings out of your locker room and just move on with your life. I don't get it. My
favorite bad idea on the trade market right now, just for everyone involved, is trading Jimmy to Washington for like Kelly Oubre, Troy Brown, throw in like a first-round pick and Austin Rivers salary match. And I think you can make a case that is a better offer than what Miami is putting on the table, other than the fact that, oh boy, would that be a mess in Washington.
I would watch every night.
I would watch every single night, only to see who the first person to throw hands is.
No, because Jimmy would try to kill Dwight Howard. He would just try to murder him.
Is there anywhere else that actually makes sense though? Like, is there a team out there? Like, is Masai going to go down this road? Like, could Masai throw an offer of DeLon Wright before he signs his extension? So I guess it would have to be basically today. But like, could he throw like DeLon Wright, Norman Powell's money, and like something else at Minnesota and make this work?
I mean, I don't think Masai does, but what does Tibbs do? Does Tibbs do it? I mean, not Tibbs. Does Pop do it?
Yeah, I mean, like, could Greg? I mean, like, that's another question too. Like, San Antonio again is so culture conscious. Like, would they consider going down the road of? I mean, what they offer is so frustrating, just because all the guys they can offer are hurt.
Yeah,
like,
or gone.
Yeah, like Derek White, Lonnie Walker, and DeJounte Murray. We'll talk about the Spurs here in a second because what a mess that is. But like, I don't know what they offer for Jimmy at this stage, unless like they're just willing to take on injured guys.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's nothing that they can offer, really.
Could Detroit do something wild?
I mean, so you can offer Reggie Jackson, and see, but I mean, that's robbing Peter to pay Paul, basically.
Yeah, I don't think they have enough.
I don't think they have enough either. I mean, the Utah Jazz have enough, but they don't want him.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's.
Is there a way for Houston to get it done?
Well, I mean, is Houston really not going to part with PJ Tucker over Jimmy Butler?
Yeah, I mean, I find that hard to believe. But like the other part of this too is if you're Minnesota, I think the Miami deal is better than Eric Gordon and PJ Tucker. So like, just make that move. But like, I don't know how PJ helps Minnesota either, unless you're Tom Thibodeau's fucking whacked out brain trying to compete right now.
Yeah, I mean, I would have, if Houston still had DeAnthony Melton,
yeah,
you could probably say, okay, I'll take Eric Gordon, give me PJ Tucker, but you got to give me Melton as well, because that's a guy that you can develop, and that's a guy that I think has a chance to be pretty good one day. But there's just no young talent there.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how they get that done. I really don't. The last thing I'll ask you on this before we move on, how long is Jimmy Butler in Minnesota?
Wow. I don't know. Because right now Tibbs is like, my ex in high school, man. He don't want to let go.
Yeah.
Like, at all. He does not want to let go, period.
Yeah. If I am Glenn Taylor, I would have stepped in a while ago. But, like, I think that my guess on this is that Glenn Taylor steps in at some point within the next 2 weeks and makes a deal. Because it's just too big of a mess.
It is definitely a big mess. I mean, it's something, I mean, right now, I think even if you get Jimmy Butler out of there while we're literally doing this podcast, it's going to take a long time to unwrap the damage that's been done here in the last month.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's right.
I mean, he basically, you've invested, if you're Glenn Taylor, you've invested in Andrew Wiggins and Karl-Anthony Towns. You've invested hundreds of millions of dollars into both of those guys, and Jimmy just eviscerated both of them on and off the floor on his way out of town.
Yeah. Yeah. How are they going to react to that? I don't know. I really don't. Let's move on. Let's talk about Joakim Noah real quick. The Knicks have finally ended the Joakim Noah era in New York. They now are on the hook for $38 million to Joakim Noah over the course of the next, I believe it's 4 years now. The reason that, well, I guess I'll ask you first before I go into why I think this was stupid. What was your reaction whenever this first happened?
What was my reaction? Like when Phil Jackson first gave him the contract?
Well, no, I mean like when they cut him, but I'm sure that it was similar.
I mean, we talked about this on the text, right?
Yeah.
And your position was clear. They probably shouldn't have done this. I think that they should have, because I think that they really just need to. I think they need to sever ties and move on. We're in the Scott Perry era. You're trying to move on from the Phil Jackson era, and Joakim Noah is a shining example of, the farce that was the Phil Jackson era. And I mean, he was like, you gave a washed guy. Like they didn't give him the contract and then he became washed. He was already washed when they gave him the contract.
Yeah.
You gave a washed guy $72 million. Like, bruh, what are you doing? And, and I just think, and I understand where you're coming from in terms of the logistics, and yes, now you're on the hook for $38 million, but I think you just got to remove Joakim from the equation, and you're trying to move on. You're trying to cut ties. You're trying to sever ties. You're probably going to sever ties with Enes Kanter at the end of the year. I mean, you're just trying to move on and get your guys. It's very much like a college coach that comes in and just runs everybody off, right? Like, yeah. He says, okay, we're going to go a different way. We're going to clean the slate. We're probably going to suck for a few years, but at least I'll be able to build the roster up with my guys. And I think that that's what you're seeing here with the Knicks.
So I think that's all very reasonable. The reason that I would not have, look, Joakim Noah is not going to play for the Knicks again. Like, that is very clear, and that is something that I would make clear from the jump. And all of this is clouded by the fact that the Players Association was getting ready to like step in and really try and figure out exactly how to make this all right by the players involved here. So if I am the New York Knicks, I don't understand what I'm necessarily doing wrong here, because I, in this case, am paying a player a contract that when he signed it, was not worthy of this contract. Everyone in the NBA knew it. He's a guy that, according to Adrian Wojnarowski, who has about as much power and about as much information as literally anyone in the NBA, has zero traction on any other offer. He cannot get another contract. So when that is the case, you're not talking about a situation where he is, a potential player somewhere else and the Knicks are holding him hostage. No, they're just letting him sit there, and he's doing the same thing now that he would have been before. So what is their wrongdoing here is my case. And if that is the case, what are we doing wrong? And I don't think they're doing anything wrong here. And this is weird that I'm sticking up for a team versus a specific player, but I actually think that this is just one of those situations where the team is actually not at fault somehow. Why would you ever side with billionaires? I don't know. Why would you ever side with James Dolan? I don't know, but this is one of those cases. If I am the Knicks, because of the salary cap implications here, I would have just kept him on the roster and seen what happened and let the chips fall where they may. Because what is to happen now? They have stretched him. They have a $6.2 million cap hit, if I remember correctly. It might be 6.4 on their cap for the next 3 years after this one. So they're guaranteeing themselves, they're locking themselves in to not having essentially somewhere between 4 and 6% of their salary cap to use over the course of the next 3 seasons. Why that is a bad idea now is that there's no reason to lock yourself into that before knowing you can go out and get someone on the free agency market this year. The only reason you make this move is to go out and be a player in free agency in the summer of 2019. The Knicks are not the Lakers. Like, Luol Deng gave back money. Like, the reason that it made sense is they had their cap hit lowered from $6.3 million to $5 million whenever Luol Deng gave his money back in his buyout. So it made sense to do that then. In B, the Lakers have LeBron James. They're obviously going to be a player in free agency, whereas the Knicks, they don't really have that. Like, they have Kristaps, which is great. They have some young guys that are potentially useful, Frank Ntilikina and Kevin Knox, and I think we're somewhat excited about both of those guys, but they're not a destination yet. Like, we don't know for a fact that NBA free agents are going to want to go there, and part of that goes to the fact of, you can talk about severing from the Phil Jackson era. To me, the Phil Jackson era, the Jeff Van Gundy era, the Jerome James era, all of these eras are the same, and they're all because Jim Dolan is still in charge. Like, the Knicks are not going to have a positive reputation as long as Jim Dolan is running the front office. So I don't really know if there's going to be the image rehabilitation. And in this scenario, the way that it would eventually play out is, I would say, Joakim, you can come, you can be with the team. If you start some shit, we are going to send you home. You're going to file a grievance if we send you home, and we're going to fight it. We're just going to fight it because we think it's worth having the roster and cap flexibility going forward. Because if they don't sign anyone in free agency this year, it would have been a scenario where they could just eat this money for next year and have a totally clean cap sheet going into 2020. Now, because they have decided to do this, they don't have that clean cap sheet going forward, and they have no guarantee that they're signing anyone. So I would have said, hey, we're going to fight this grievance. We don't think we're doing anything wrong. Maybe we would lose. Maybe we would win. But if we lose, there's no downside. Like, it's going to be the same scenario. We're just going to wave and stretch you anyway. So it's just, to me, the incentives here are very clearly in favor of keeping him on this roster until next summer, whenever I know I'm signing someone. And if I know I'm signing someone, I just stretch him anyway, and it's the same thing. But it's setting the Knicks up for failure to do this, because what this leads to is a situation where the Knicks are now going to feel like they have to use that money next summer. And that is a very dangerous situation for a New York Knicks organization that has never proven themselves able to properly spend money in free agency.
I think I think part of the question that you have to ask yourself is, even if you do all of that, what are the pros and cons of having Joakim Noah around Kevin Knox or around Frank Ntilikina or around Mitchell Robinson?
That's what I'm saying. Like, don't even have him around.
Alonzo Trier.
Just don't have him around.
Or even just the presence or the cloud hanging over your head. I mean,
yeah.
I think I get both sides. I think that Scott Perry and David Fizdale, it's just right now at this point, it's just culture reset.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Complete and total culture reset. Now the question is, can Scott Perry and David Fizdale, can they rehab the Knicks' reputation to where it overcomes the stench of James Dolan? And that's a lot of work to do.
It's a lot of stench.
That's a lot of stench.
Yeah. Some other guys that got released here: Jarrett Jack, Emeka Okafor, Tyler Zeller, Josh Eustace. I mean, that's really it. Like, the rest of these cuts aren't really surprising. I was a little bit surprised Jarrett Jack got cut just because that point guard situation isn't particularly robust, I guess is the way to put it. But I mean, like, did anyone else surprise you?
No, I think Josh Eustace surprised me a little bit because, they went out of their way to sign him, and, they really need a wing. They really, really, really need a wing. And they don't have that, wings is something they don't have. So I think that surprised me a little bit, but, I didn't think Jarrett Jack should have been signed in the first place. I think that he's pretty much done. Tyler Zeller surprised me a little bit. But, I mean, obviously it was pretty obvious that Christian Wood was playing well enough to make that roster. Emeka Okafor, that didn't surprise me. That didn't really surprise at all. So, yeah, I mean, there's nothing really earth-shattering. Were you surprised that Antonio Cleveland got cut?
A little bit.
I was a little bit surprised at that.
Yeah, like, they made a move to, I believe they claimed him on waivers. So, like, they actually did, portray that they wanted him. They wanted to make sure that they got him by claiming him early. So, like, I'm a little bit surprised, but it's Antonio Cleveland. Like, I'm not sure he's an NBA player, so I don't know.
Yeah, I get it.
The last thing we want to talk about here in terms of news is the 76ers and Elton Brand had to come out and issue an apology, a preemptive apology before anyone found out that anything was happening, that Mike Muscala's father, Bob, had been tweeting all sorts of just terrible racist shit on his Twitter account. Elton Brand said, like, earlier today, I was made aware of inappropriate and offensive social media posts from Bob Muscala, father of Mike Muscala. Simply put, they are unacceptable and in no way reflective of the beliefs of our organization. Having known Mike since his rookie year in 2013-14 when we were teammates, I am also certain that these posts are in no way reflective of his own personal beliefs. Mike has always been a great teammate and ambassador of the game of basketball, and he has never shied away from using his platform to do good in the community. He has our organization's full support. Mike Muscala's father tweeted, Jimmy Butler's behavior is not a dust-up. This is egomaniacal African-American mental illness. Can the Timberwolves overcome Chicago diseases of selfishness, mafioso/dons, and gang murder and become the Minnesota Timberwolves again? Obviously an allusion to the fact that Jimmy Butler used to play in Chicago. If Butler acted this way on drugs, he goes to rehab. Act this way due to mental problems, ESPN comes to him. Oh boy, this is not good stuff. Tony, I will give you the floor, obviously.
It accentuates, there was an Ice Cube song from 1993. I think it was on the Death Certificate album. And, part of it was like, no matter how much success you have in life, here's how some people feel about you. And, that just reading that really reminded me of of that track, and it was just, I just think that we have a long way to go in this country socially, and there's a lot of due to who is in the White House right now. There was a lot of stuff that previously bubbled below the surface that have come above the surface, and people are comfortable in saying it because their president in chief is the president in chief that we currently have is giving some people a platform. You saw it manifest itself in Charlottesville. You've seen it. I've seen it manifest itself, personally in front of my face. And, to me, this is just another example of that. And I just think that, those were some really tough words for somebody to tweet out. And I'm glad that Philly came out and as you said, preemptively disassociating themselves with what Muscala's father was saying. And I'm glad that, I'm glad that Brand and Philly, not only did they support Mike Muscala, but they said why. Because my first reaction to reading that was, well, does Mike Muscala feel this way? I mean, does the apple fall far from the tree? And the fact that they were like, listen, Elton Brown's like, listen, this is not who Mike Muscala is, and this is why this isn't who Mike Muscala is. To me, that's reassuring to me, just as somebody watching from the other side of the country. But I'm sure, with the melting pot that is NBA locker rooms, I'm sure that would be reassuring to them as well. And I just, I have no tolerance for racism or sexism or, discriminating against people for their religion, for their sexual preferences, or anything. And I just think that it just sucks seeing something like that. And seeing something like that so close to the sport that I love, because those opinions were trash. You can't say stuff like that. And if you feel stuff like that in my personal life, I have no use for you whatsoever. So I'm glad that Philly distanced themselves from him, and I hope they do so behind the scenes as well. So I hope that I hope that this is not just a public disavowalment.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, and I'm glad that they did it preemptively in the way that they did as well. It was only a matter of time before this stuff got found, because everything on the internet gets found. To just so publicly do it and to so publicly disassociate themselves from it, both Mike and the organization itself, I think that spoke more volumes than if it would have been found and then needed to be talked about and then have a release about it. Like, I think it means a little bit more, and it says a little bit more to me that the organization is taking this seriously and that it's bullshit. I mean, just straight up, I agree with you. There's no tolerance for stuff like this, to call African Americans mentally ill because Jimmy Butler is throwing a fit in Minnesota. It's totally bullshit. So let's move on. Let's talk about some predictions in the NBA. I am going to let you have the floor. I've already discussed my MVP on the previous podcast. It is Giannis Antetokounmpo. What about yours? Who are you predicting for the MVP of this college basketball season?
College?
NBA season. MVP. Oh. We can talk about college. We can talk about college if you want, but awkward transitions make for me trying to just kind of talk through it so that there's a little bit of a buffer between a serious moment and a getting back to talking about basketball bullshit. And I fucked up. I'm sorry.
No, you're good, Sam. Believe me. Listen, I'm going with LeBron James, and this is why I'm going with LeBron James, because I think there's going to be a real natural progression of about at least 10 wins. They won 35 games last season. So I think that the Lakers will win at least 45. And I think that, LeBron James is going to have his typical 27, 7-7-ish type of season. And I think that, I think that there's a lot of sentiment that LeBron should have probably won one of these MVPs in the last 3 or 4 years. And I think that, there's going to be regular season. There's going to be regular season proof, if you will. Like, the Lakers going from 35 to 47 wins. That will put them plus 12. That's probably at the top of the league for a year-to-year improvement. So, I think that if, LeBron just has his regular season plus the improvement on paper that the Los Angeles Lakers probably have. I think that's what adds up to. I think he's going to win his MVP, and I think this is probably one of his last years that he'll have a shot to win MVP. And I think that I just think that this might be his year.
Yeah, I think that's totally reasonable. I think that the LeBron season this year is going to go one of two ways. Like, he's either going to destroy worlds and figure out how Brandon Ingram and Lonzo Ball and all these guys work with him together and, make sure that they have the core and the structure with which he can be successful with going into 2019-20 whenever they go out and get another superstar. Or I think this could be a year where he tries to not overly exert himself, knowing that they're probably not a title contender. But I think it's hard to turn that off if you're LeBron James. I think it's hard to just mentally make that switch to not competing at the highest level, because when you have LeBron James on your basketball team, you are kind of by definition competing at the highest level. So I don't know. I mean, are we going to get him turning it off? Maybe he turns it off a little bit in December. We've seen him flip the switch defensively sometimes where he just kind of doesn't go too crazy. It's hard for me to believe, though, that he totally flipped the switch. So is even the slight downgrade that he could show, only averaging 25, 7, and 7. Is that a scenario where he even just can't win MVP based off of that?
Yeah, I mean, if he goes 25, 7, and 7, I mean, and Giannis goes 28, 8, and 6 or something like that, and James Harden has his regular type of season. Steph and Kevin Durant have their regular types of seasons. It's going to be difficult, but I think I think if let's say LeBron has the season he had last year, which last year he was incredible. And the Lakers go from 35 to 47, 48, maybe even 49 or 50 wins, then, you have LeBron having a great season. Plus you have, the significant improvement that you can justify giving him the MVP for.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, actually. Simple Contacts is the most convenient way to renew your contact lens prescription and reorder your brand of contacts from anywhere in minutes. Instead of heading to the doctor year after year just to renew your prescription for something you wear every day, you can do it on your own time and terms in just a few minutes. This truly is vision care for the 21st century. It works where you just take a 5-minute Simple Contacts vision test online. It'll be renewed by a licensed doctor. You receive a renewed prescription and reorder your contacts. All you need is your current contacts, an internet connection, and 10 feet of space. Even if you're totally out of contacts, they have got an option for you. Why would you use Simple Contacts? It's convenient, it's fast, it's reliable, it offers choice, and it saves you money. The vision test is only $20. Compare that with an appointment. If you don't have eye insurance, it's going to cost you up to $200 for that appointment. So the contact lens prices are unbeatable. Standard shipping is free. And best of all, we're going to offer a promotion to our listeners. Go to simplecontacts.com/gametheory20. That's GAMETHEORY 20. And you're going to get $20 off of your first order with Simple Contacts. That's simplecontacts.com/gametheory20. I use Simple Contacts. I can only emphasize to you guys so many times that It is just the easiest way to wear contacts. It is the easiest way to order contacts. It genuinely makes my life so much easier. It saves hours out of my year just by going to simplecontacts.com/gametheory20 and using their app to order contacts. Go to simplecontacts.com/gametheory20. Let's get into some of the more specialized awards. Defensive Player of the Year, you being in Utah, I have a pretty good guess on who you're going to say.
Am I?
You're not going to say Rudy?
I'll probably say Rudy.
I have Rudy Gobert. Like, he won last year. Last year was a little bit closer because he missed some time. I mean, like, he's just the best defensive player in the NBA. He's the most impactful throughout the course of an 82-game sample. There are ways you can get to him in the playoffs whenever you're specializing based off of matchups, but during the regular season, you can't really do that, and it gets a little bit tougher, I think.
Yeah, he's tremendous, and I think, watching him in the preseason, he's gotten better. Obviously it all hinges on if he can stay healthy. But he's bigger, he's stronger, he's catching better in traffic. There's such a difference with the Jazz when he's on the floor. I mean, you just can't get into the paint. He's terrific. He's a terrific shot blocker, but more than that, he's a terrific all-around defender. Elite rebounder as well. I mean, he's definitely the best defensive player in the league. Like you said, but with Rudy right now, his challenge is he has got to prove that he's able to be matchup proof. Yeah, matchup proof in the playoffs.
It's not that he's a liability in space defensively. He's not. Like, he moves his feet fine for a guy that size, but you can catch him sometimes. Like, against the absolute best pick and roll point guards, you can catch him.
Well, I thought he was tremendous in the series against Oklahoma City. I thought that I didn't think he was as bad as people tried to make him out to be against Houston, but there were issues there. When they hunted switches with him with Chris Paul and James Harden, and when they got the switch, those guys went to work. But at the same time, those guys go to work on anybody. So he's got to prove that he's matchup proof at the highest levels, and I think that's his progression this season. But like you said, in the regular season, I mean, he's definitely to me the best defensive player in the league.
Some other candidates that I just want to point out here. Clint Capella obviously is someone who really is the linchpin of Houston's defense. His ability to switch on to ones with their switch-heavy scheme is incredibly valuable. He's obviously a good rim protector as well. I think he sometimes gets slightly overrated there. Like, if you look at his defensive field goal percentage against 60% last year, that's like right in line with league average. He does contest more shots than anyone in the NBA though, and that is very, very valuable. It's always worth mentioning Joel Embiid, I think, as well. Embiid is one of the best rim protectors in the NBA when he's on the floor. Allowed just 52.4% at the basket last season when defending. That was third in the NBA. We could talk about Anthony Davis as well. Anthony Davis, 54% against at the basket. Obviously a great switch defender. Sometimes I think gets a little bit lost off the ball, or sometimes he'll occasionally chase the big block, but that's more nitpicking. He's absolutely a terrific defender. We're not going to get a full season of Andre Robertson, unfortunately. He would be a good perimeter pick. Is there anyone else that you're kind of looking at as a potential guy here?
I mean, obviously there's the regular guys. Obviously I like Kawhi Leonard. I like Draymond Green. I like all those guys. I like Andre if he could come back and kind of regain his form. I really like DeJounte Murray. Too bad he's going to miss the season. Yeah. But I thought he was trending towards being the best point guard defender in the league.
The other guy we should mention here is probably Al Horford. Boston's defense is obviously going to be terrific again, and Horford is in many ways, again, the linchpin of that because of his ability to switch, because of his ability to guard bigger like wings and forwards like a Ben Simmons just in matchups, let alone the way that he can really move and protect the basket on his own. Like he really is a critical piece of one of the best defenses in the league.
Yeah, and you know, he's very, very underrated, and he has been for so long in his career. He could defend the fours, he could defend at the five. He really makes Boston's defense go. And the thing that makes him so valuable is the way he communicates defensively.
Yeah.
I think you know that people don't realize how well that guy talks on the floor, and that is a skill. And it's a skill that when Joakim Noah was at his best, he was very skilled at that as well. You know, but he talks as well or better than anybody in the NBA defensively from that back line. In terms of telling his guards where the screen's coming from, what's going on behind him, and that's such a skill, and it helps Boston a lot.
Yeah, no question there. Let's move on. Sixth man of the year. Do you care about this award?
Of course I care about our sixth man.
I care about the sixth man. I just don't know if I care about the award.
Who is your sixth man of the year?
I have Marcus Smart. I think he's going to play a critical role defensively. Probably going to play more minutes than most sixth men, just by nature of Kyrie getting injured, by nature of his role defensively on this team. I mean, maybe he starts most of the year. That's kind of a tradition of sixth men of the year, is they end up starting for portions of the year. So, I mean, like, it's just it's an award that is difficult to project, I guess is the way to put it.
I'm going to go with you with Marcus Smart.
Yeah. I think they're going to have the best bench in the NBA, too. I should say that.
I mean, I think there's going to be the best bench in the NBA. I think that the other guy I would go with is Fred VanVleet.
Yeah.
He's a guy that I would definitely target for that award because he's on one of the best benches in the league. He's tremendous. He can play on the ball. He can play off the ball. He's a terrific shooter. He can go off the dribble. And, you know, is how durable is Kyle Lowry going to be? That's another thing. So, you know, I definitely look at Fred VanVleet as well.
They were 3 points better per 100 possessions with VanVleet on the floor offensively, 5 points better defensively with VanVleet on the floor. Just a very, very underrated point guard around the NBA. There's a reason that he got basically $9 million a year to play in Toronto.
Deserves every penny of it.
No question. Most improved player. This is kind of just like a breakout guy, I guess. Like, I mean, like I hate the way this award is voted on.
DeJounte.
Oh yeah, we can't say DeJounte though because he's out. Like he probably would have been the pick for it. He would have been a very popular pick.
He would have been my guy.
I'm not a big DeJounte Murray guy. I will say that. I don't really get the appeal offensively. Incredible defender, but I think he has a ways to go offensively.
I think he put in a lot of work this summer. I think that he was ready for a breakout.
Do you?
I think they got rid of Tony Parker. He wouldn't have had to look over his shoulder. I thought that, yeah, it sucks that he got hurt.
Yeah, it does. It really does suck. Who is going to be your pick now that he's injured, though?
I don't know.
Like,
who's your pick?
I have Brandon Ingram here. I think
Brandon Ingram's a good pick.
Yeah, like it's often just like the third or second year guy who takes the leap into being a borderline all-star. And I think Brandon Ingram is that. Like I think Brandon Ingram is going to be a very, very good basketball player. And then I think also he will get support if he continues to improve along the trajectory that I think he's capable of. He'll get support from the analytical community as well because those guys thought he was just abject garbage his first year in the NBA, which he wasn't great, and he was better last year, but I think that they underrate him a little bit currently. And if he continues to play the way he's played in the preseason, continues to play the way that he's capable of, I think that those guys will start to buy in, and he'll get attention from analytical types as well as like just the general public now that LeBron is there.
Okay, I'm going to go with somebody who is already getting paid, and boy, is he getting paid a lot of money. but who I think has a chance to make a tremendous leap this year. But this is going to be a risky pick because I'm not sure his teammates are going to allow him to make the leap possible. Well, I'm going to go with Otto Porter.
If you look at like who you were going to pick for all NBA last season, you didn't get, like, I will say this, he was probably in the top 10 to 12 for the forward position, maybe top 12 for the forward position, just because that position wasn't wildly deep. He's also a good two-way player. You got to the point where he got there a lot quicker than what you think, and a lot quicker than what most, I think, fans would think.
He is a guy who is a 40% three-point shooter. He's a plus defender through 4 spots on the floor. He's a guy that can handle the basketball better than people think. He's a plus rebounder. And I think that this is the year that Scotty Brooks is like, okay, we are going to give you the autonomy and the green light for which to really make an impact. I mean, Wall and Beal are not enough. Yeah. And I think that we all know that. They need a third guy to really step up and be a really good third guy. And I think that Otto can make that leap from really good starter to borderline all-star.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very reasonable pick. To me, like, again, I hate the way this award is voted on. Like last year, I thought Spencer Dinwiddie clearly should have won, right? Like he went from G League guy who suffered injuries early in his career to legit NBA starter who was probably like an above average starter in the NBA. A guy like that this year that I do just want to give like special mention to is Christian Wood out of UNLV. He's kind of stunted along a few times here and there in, starting his career in many different places. And he seems to have found a pretty good home in Milwaukee. He's averaging about 14 points and 8 rebounds over the course of his 4 preseason games. He made the team over Tyler Zeller this year. To me, I just want to point him out as someone that I think this award should be voted on more around guys like Chris Wood, who I think, again, he has a chance to be like a very real rotation player who could develop into their best center by the end of the year, as opposed to guys like Otto Porter and Brandon Ingram, who we know are good. Like they're just getting naturally better.
Yeah. I mean, I'm skeptical on Christian Wood. I know I sense that you're a lot more in on him than I am.
Oh, no. Let's be clear here. Having talked to people who dealt with him during the pre-draft process, having talked to plenty of people around the NBA on Christian Wood, I 100% buy the skepticism. There are very real reasons.
I think so. I mean, here are the good things I think about Chris. I think he's insanely athletic for a guy his size. Unnaturally athletic for a guy his size, and he does a lot of things that you want out of your big in today's day and age. He can move his feet on the perimeter. He's a really good pick and dive big. You can throw the ball up to him. I think that he really fits with Giannis and what they're trying to do in terms of physical profile around Giannis. But man, I mean, some of the stuff that's been circulating about him. I mean, let's put it this way. Christian Wood should have been a top 10 NBA draft pick.
When he declared for the draft, he was seen pretty universally around the NBA as a top 20 pick.
Yeah.
And it ended up that he went undrafted.
Exactly.
So that
speaks volumes.
That speaks a lot, I think. Let's move on. Last award here. I might ask you one other thing too, but last award here is Rookie of the Year. Who is your pick?
My pick is Luka Doncic.
Yep.
That's my pick. To me, he's unquestionably the best player in the rookie class. I think that him and DeAndre Ayton are probably down the road going to be seen as the 2 best players. I think that Rick Carlisle is using him terrifically in terms of using him as kind of sort of like a playmaking 4. Mm-hmm. And I mean, he's just, I just watch them every day, and I'm just trying to figure out what Sacramento was doing, and to a lesser degree, Atlanta.
Yeah, the Sacramento of it all is going to be tough, I think. Because, like, I even really like Marvin. Like, it feels to me like the tide has turned already on Marvin Bagley, which sucks. And I think it's very sad for him.
I really like Marvin.
Yeah.
I do.
When we say that, like, they should have just taken Luka, that's not an indictment on Marvin. Like, I think Marvin Bagley is going to be a really good NBA player. It's just that, like, Luka Doncic is exactly what they needed, and he's just going to be better, I think. I do feel bad, though, especially given their roster glut right now, because one of my bold predictions, and I want to run this by you, on the last podcast, was that Harry Giles finishes in the top 5 of Rookie of the Year voting. Are you in on the Harry Giles hive?
Well, and that's one of the reasons why I was like, grab Luka, because you already have Harry Giles, which means you already have somebody who's similar to Marvin Bagley.
Yeah.
Okay, let me just
calm down.
Just calm down. Just breathe.
Just gotta calm down.
You know, look, as I said, I really like Marvin Bagley. I do like Harry Giles a lot. But you know, if you got Harry Giles and Marvin Bagley, you got to play both of them, and that means one of them's playing out of position. Either one of them is a 5.
Yep.
And, you know, for all of our talk about positionless basketball, you can talk about that all you want to, but you are the position that you can guard. And neither one of those guys can guard at the 5 position because they don't protect the rim.
I think Harry has a shot too.
He has a shot too, but I watched him against the Jazz when he was playing the 5, and he had no idea which angles to take defensively in the pick and roll as a 5, as opposed to being at the 4. And they were just throwing the ball over his head and lobbing it to Rudy Gobert through the entire time.
Yeah,
that Harry Giles was playing at the 5. So I mean, you could talk positionless basketball and all of that stuff sounds good, but at the same time, you've got to guard your position, and if you can't guard your position, then you can't play that position.
Yeah, that's a good point. Let's give one more player-based prediction. Who is so like every year there's a first-time All-NBA player, right? Like last year, Victor Oladipo is a perfect example of this. Who is your first-time All-NBA player this year?
I mean, there are a couple of candidates. I think Bradley Beal's a candidate for that. I think you can argue CJ McCollum's a candidate for that. I think you can possibly make an argument for Donovan Mitchell if he has a real breakout season.
That's my guy. That's who I'd pick.
But I mean, there's a lot of competition for that. There's a lot of people that Donovan have to jump in order to get that far up the ladder. I don't think Jason Tatum will get the usage to get to that point.
Yep.
It's got to be Ben Simmons, right?
Yeah, I think Ben Simmons is a totally reasonable pick here. He also has a bit cleaner of a road in. You just look at the forward depth versus the guard depth in the NBA. Like, we don't know what's going to happen with Jimmy Butler. We don't know how LaMarcus Aldridge is going to look this year in a new San Antonio scheme. Paul George is very, very good, but I think that the level's just like slightly lower from the forward spot than the guard spot, especially once you get beyond those guys. You do have Gordon Hayward coming back this year, which could play a role, depending on how he comes back. But, you look at the guard position, you have guys like Damian Lillard, James Harden, Russell Westbrook, Stephen Curry, Victor Oladipo, I don't think is going anywhere. DeMar DeRozan still exists. You mentioned Bradley Beal, and then there's Donovan, and then you can just keep going and going. Kemba Walker, I think, is going to be very close to that level. Chris Paul didn't make it last year, and if he plays 70 games, Chris Paul is absolutely going to make All NBA. So it's just Klay Thompson at some point has to make All NBA as well. So like it gets tricky, I think, to try and get to the guard position versus the forward position. And I think it's reasonable to say that Ben has a cleaner road, but I think I would pick both of them to be like right on that cusp, both Donovan and Ben.
Yeah, I think I think Ben's probably more likely.
Yeah.
Than Donovan. But, here's the thing with Donovan. I mean, I think that he averaged, 20 a game last year. I wouldn't be shocked if if he's at 24, 25 a night because
that's what
if he's at, 24, 25 a night and he's doing it rather efficiently and he's defending and, he's playmaking and the Jazz are really good or as good as that I think that they can be, there's definitely a chance. Donovan's, man, he's a real talent and he's a dog, and that's the other thing. I mean, he plays hungry, and I think he's always going to play hungry, and he's always going to play in attack mode. So it'll be interesting to see. But I think if I had to make one choice right now, I'm probably picking Ben Simmons.
Who are your Eastern Conference finalists?
Boston and Toronto. This is pretty easy.
So you're going to say no Philadelphia. You're going to say no Indiana, who I'm super high on.
I think Boston and Toronto are by far the two best. I wouldn't say by far, but I think they're clearly the two best teams in the East.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. I would also go Boston and Toronto, I think, especially once you get to playoff time. That Toronto team just seems a little bit more built than Indiana to compete in the playoffs.
And, well, they're much more built than last year to compete in the playoffs because Kawhi can slow a game down from possession to possession and control a game from possession to possession far better than Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan ever could.
That's a really, really good point. And the game definitely slows down in the playoffs, just where every single possession matters in such a significant way. Your Western Conference finalists.
I think this is closer because I think that Oklahoma City, especially when they get Russ back, and I think that Utah are closer to Houston than they were last year. But I'm still going to go with Houston and Golden State.
I am going to go Golden State. And I am going Oklahoma City. As you mentioned, I do have Houston, Utah, and Oklahoma City just all right there. To me, having Andre Robertson for the second half of the year as opposed to the first half of the year, that's going to play a pretty big role for Oklahoma City. They do have to get to the point where they're not on the same side of the draw as Golden State, though. They really do need to hope that Russ comes back and can lead them on a run earlier in the season than what his current predicament would actually portend.
Oklahoma City and Utah and the Lakers and Portland, everybody's going to be diving for that number 3 spot.
Yeah.
Because they're the presumption is, I mean, even if last year Golden State was the number 2 seed, but the presumption is that Golden State's going to end up the number 1 seed, and you want to avoid the number 1 seed for as long as possible.
Yeah, I think that's right. Who are your NBA finalists?
I'm going to go Toronto and Golden State.
I think that's reasonable. I'm going to go Boston and Golden State. Who is your NBA champion?
I'm going to go with Golden State. Going to go on a limb here.
Yeah, I know. But here is what I will say about going on a limb. I am also picking Golden State. I think that this will be Golden State's last title of this dynasty. I just think that it seems like the tea leaves are going a certain direction with Kevin Durant. You have Draymond Green getting a year older. You have, his free agency impending.
Are we going to talk about Draymond Green, how he has not looked good this preseason?
I think that it's hard with Dre because there's a very real, why does he give a shit about for preseason factor? You know what I mean?
Also true. Very true.
He doesn't have to prove anything to anyone. We know how good Draymond Green is. There's just no reason for him to care. And if it, even for the first 20 games, if he continues to look like this in the regular season, people will talk about it, but I won't really care all that much. The thing is, though, with him, he does need to have a relatively good regular season this year, because in many ways, this is going to kind of act as his, free agency year. Like, I think he does need to prove to Golden State that he is worth investing in long term. And his free agency comes up 2019-20, right after that 2020, or it's 2019-20, right, for his free agency?
Yeah. Yep.
So he does need to prove to them that he's worth investing in long term. He needs to prove to people around the NBA that he's worth investing in long term. Just given the way that his kind of contract negotiations could go, I could potentially see a reason for him to consider taking a cheaper extension versus trying to hit the free agency market and go wild in terms of cashing in. I would hope that he really kind of gives a shit in a high level this year.
I mean, I definitely think, I think that he's going to be fine. And down the stretch, he's going to do what needs to be done. Mm-hmm. But I think when you look at Golden State, I mean, I think last year's title, I think that was a difficult title.
Yeah.
They had to deal with Houston. They had to deal with each other.
Yep.
And I think that, there's going to be some of that this year now. They've done really well for themselves. One thing they've done really well for themselves throughout their title runs is supplementing supplementing their core pieces.
Yep.
So, they supplemented with Kevin Durant. Obviously, you supplement with the second best player in the league. And this year, obviously, you have DeMarcus Cousins. So that hunger, Kevin Durant came with a hunger. He didn't have a title. He needed a title. DeMarcus Cousins comes with a hunger. He's making a mid-level exception. So he's coming to Golden State for one reason. So, they've surrounded their core pieces with people who aren't going to be complacent, which is good.
Yep.
And I think that really helps. But, obviously DeMarcus Cousins is probably not going to be there next year. Kevin Durant, there's a definite chance that he's not going to be there next year. And then you have to deal with Clay, then you have to deal with Draymond a little bit down the road. So, I mean, it's and then you're going to have to deal with, Houston's going to be hungry. Oklahoma City's going to be hungry. Utah's going to be hungry. Now, the question is, is that hunger going to be enough? Are they going to be good enough? But, there are teams out there that think they have a chance. Boston, I think if Boston played Golden State tomorrow in a 7-game series, Boston will believe that they can win. Same thing with Toronto. I'm not sure Philly would feel that way, but I definitely know those first two teams will feel that way. So, yeah. I mean, they're going to have to go through a lot again.
Yeah. No, I think that's definitely right. It's going to be a more difficult road than we've seen, and they're going to have to keep dealing with each other, and they're going to have to deal with the market factors that kind of loom over this entire situation, I guess is the way to put it. So it's going to be actually a really interesting NBA season. I don't feel that same sense of an impending march toward the inevitable this year. The East is obviously very wide open, and then Golden State has real things that they have to work out between integrating DeMarcus Cousins and kind of getting everything together with their core pieces. If DeMarcus comes in and dominates and Dre looks great, yeah, sure, the season's over and Golden State's going to win. But there actually are some things that they need to figure out here. Yeah,
definitely. But I think they will figure it out. When you have two of the top 5 players and you have, basically 5 Olympians on your roster, you tend to figure stuff out. So, I think that eventually they're going to be fine. It's teams are going to be hungry and teams are going to be coming at them. And, that's the other thing, the LeBron's in LA and he's not going to be a threat this year, but if he gets if he fortifies that roster with some help next summer, they're going to be a threat. So it'll be interesting, definitely.
Tony, tell the people what you've got coming up on The Athletic.
Just a whole bunch of goodness. Right now, I just couple days ago, I just dropped a story on Royce O'Neal. And yesterday, I just dropped a story on what the Jazz have learned in the preseason about themselves. I got a couple of big stories coming up. And obviously, the regular season's coming up. So really excited. We're really doing really great things at The Athletic. Please subscribe to The Athletic, not only for myself, but for my incredible colleagues, one of which I have the pleasure of doing a weekly podcast with. So let's go. Let's do great things together.
Basketball season is going to be great. Go to theathletic.com/game theory if you want 30% off of that subscription for the first year. We're going to do a lot of really good NBA stuff. We're also going to do a lot of good draft stuff. I have draft stuff coming up here at some point, probably at least by the end of November. I've written a lot of words on the NBA draft. It's just when they're going to be published, we'll see. Yeah, go to theathletic.com/game theory. That'd be great. And until next time, we'll talk soon. Bye.